Here. One of the things I love to hear, thank you, to hear Reverend Nathan say in our services is that this is a place where I sing your song and you sing mine. That idea is really important to me, which probably doesn't surprise you since you know songs are kind of my thing. And shared songs specifically are my thing, songs people sing together. And you know what else I think of as my thing is Christmas music, like we're singing for you today. I love Christmas music, I love it. Carols, songs, choral compositions, ancient and brand new, I just love them all. They feel like my songs, but in some ways they really aren't. They feel like they are because the very first book of music I ever owned, and I don't know where it came from, I'll have to ask my dad later, was a book of Christmas carols, written out hymn style in the 4 parts, and I used the very first instrument I ever owned to play from this book, well before I could read music, and it was a Casio keyboard and calculator, all in one. It had these tiny little keys, and you could flip a switch, either do some math or switch to play some tunes. And I think it was probably my dad went through my book of carols and wrote the corresponding numbers for each of the little keys above the melody notes. So it's numbers and also plus and minus signs and equals, because it was a calculator. This book was also important when I was learning to sing in harmony. The music program in my town was just not much to talk about. But I didn't need them. I had a boombox with a dual tape deck. I could record myself singing one part and then play that back, sing another part, record that, play that back, and I had a trio of all me. So yeah, in a very personal way, Christmas music feels like my music. It was the formative music for me. But it's also not my music. The Christmas story is not really my story. I am not a Christian. As a humanist, I make no claim on Jesus, and I don't think he's making any claim on me. But I do find great meaning in compelling stories, and the Christmas story is definitely compelling. And I find it moving, the joy and the hope in it, the promise of peace, light shining in the darkness, boundless potential in a newborn life. Would I find it as compelling if not for the songs that I've sung about it, since I could sing it all? I don't know. The themes I just rattled off are important parts of the story, but they're also the parts I've been singing about my whole life. And now I feel the joy and the peace when I sing them. Though I don't believe my Savior was born that day, I do believe it's a beautiful idea, and it's inspired beautiful music, and the music inspires me to peace, to joy, to revel in the season. I can't imagine the season without the music. So maybe that festive, seasonal mood accounted for the way I reacted, which was with far less alarm and anger than many other parents, when my 7-year-old daughter came home from her public school with a flyer in her folder that invited us to celebrate Jesus. I hear yourself, oh no. She had a substitute teacher in her first grade classroom who invited the kids to her choir concert. And many parents really lost their cool when they saw that flyer, and I understand that. Willa, though, she showed me the flyer, and she told me she really wanted to go. Church, singing, choirs, that's what mommy does. So obviously it's a good thing. So I looked up the church from the flyer and found it, a Black Pentecostal church in nearby Somerville. The night of the concert came, and she still wanted to go, so we went. So having been there, at least to the first 2 hours of the event, since we left at 10 p.m. and it was still going strong. I would now say it was more a service than a concert. There was a lot of singing, yes, but there was also a half-hour-long sermon. I had thought that I was taking Willa to the service for her to learn more about the world. She's only been in UU churches so far, after all. And a little bit it was to support the teacher who I feel fairly certain made a mistake. An error in judgment, no doubt, but didn't do this with an ulterior motive. And because Willa wanted to go, and she can be very loud. No, I mean persuasive. Yeah. So I did it for her cultural education and edification, and I figured I might learn something too, something about people who worship differently than I do. But what I found was mostly I learned about myself. all my experience of this type of a worship service before this night came from movies and TV. So I know how, on occasion, a white protagonist will wander into a black worship service for some reason, and then she will inevitably become carried away by all the singing and the shouting and the clapping, and before we know it, that kooky gal is pledging her life to Jesus, at least until she leaves the church later, right, and the plot resumes. So was that my experience? No. What I learned about myself was not that I need Jesus, but that there are many public environments in which I feel physically inhibited. Sounds like a strange lesson, maybe. And I learned that because for the 2 hours that I was there in that service, I did not feel that way. I felt very free in my body. It wasn't what I expected to feel at all. I actually expected to be uncomfortable. I thought maybe I would feel pressure to participate in the dancing or the clapping or the shouting, or feel awkward or out of place when I didn't do those things, but it wasn't that way at all. The people around me moved when they felt like it, and they let me do the same thing. Sometimes the music was just so effusively joyful that I got up and moved because it felt like I needed to, and because by doing that, I got to be part of the joy, to feel it moving in me. And sometimes I didn't feel that. I just stayed in my seat and listened, and no one around me cared at all, except Willa, who would sometimes say, "Mommy, get up!" So these are not things I always feel even here in our worship. Sometimes we all stand, sometimes we all sit, sometimes we clap or don't, or sometimes we get annoyed when people clap or don't. Many times we sit in our congregation completely silent, listening raptly to thoughtful and what I feel are often necessary words. Some of those times, some of them, not all of them, I can sit there and be painfully aware of every time I move. Is it audible? Is it bothering someone? Or, when my kids are here and my son is munching and crunching on his snacks that are the only thing that keep him relatively quiet, I just feel concerned that I'm going to disturb someone else's experience of the service. In that Somerville church, it was never actually quiet enough that any move that I made could have possibly made a difference. So I want to be very clear that I am not judging either one of those conditions to be inherently better than the other. Theologically, that church was not my bag, and I don't think I could handle that decibel level for my personal regular worship experience, even if it were. But I suspect that there is a certain kind of spiritual growing a person can only do when they're in a place where they feel physically free and comfortable. And another kind of growth that comes only with true quiet, contemplative moments. I'm interested in all of those kinds of spirituality for myself, also for you. And when you are generous to, as I started out by talking about, when you're generous enough to sing your neighbor's song, and you can take that both literally and figuratively, you're not only giving them a gift, you're letting yourself expand. You might be surprised what their song does for you if you open yourself up to it. You are exploring, then, new parts of your own spirit. We don't always know what we need, and we definitely don't know what we don't know. We need each other for that. We rely on each other. In a choir, we rely on each other, especially because you can't find boom boxes with dual tape decks anymore. We need other people to sing with us. Though I suppose if I were 10 years old now and trying to do this, I'd probably find an alto part on YouTube and I'd be just fine. But as I learned as I got older, as we all learn, making music, worshiping, living, celebrating with other people who sometimes sing your song, and sometimes they ask you to sing theirs. It is infinitely more rewarding than doing it on your own.